I'm at the Flying J in Winslow, Arizona. I'm in line waiting to get fuel. This will be the last part of my shift after I get through fueling up. I've already done 454 miles. And it'll be a little over 200 miles to get from here to Casa Blanca. If it looks like I might be able to reach the Route 66 Travel Center, I might even try to get there, but I'm gonna be really tight on time, so I don't know. I'm gonna plan on stopping in Casa Blanca, and then I'll go further if I can, but I doubt it. Well, I mean, it might be possible, but it's gonna be tight. Pull forward. Outlet's still frozen. No, it's actually pouring now. Okay. Yeah, my windshield washer outlets were frozen earlier. But it's warmed up a bit. It was in the 20s earlier, but now it's 36 degrees. damn death hoses don't go far enough forward. Cheryl, good morning. I don't need to run inside at all, so I'm ready to get rolling right away. Oh, never mind, I forgot to... I need to take my trash out first. Almost forgot. Get her to walk in front, and then I got another guy coming across the left side. Alright, we are clear. From here to Casa Blanca, so we're in the ballpark of 3 hours. I got 3:42 to work with. If I can reach Route 66 Travel Center off exit 140, I will probably go for that, but I don't know for sure yet. Tentatively planning to just only make it to Casa Blanca, so either way, I'm only going to have 300 and some odd miles to go once I get there. Of what I need to get to Route 66. Might be doable. It's 104 or so miles from here to the New Mexico line. And then add in 140 to get to Route 66, so that's 245 or so. That's right at a little over 3.5 hours, so I'm going to be down to the wire, so I might just go ahead and check up at Casa Blanca, the Dancing Eagle Travel Plaza. It's about 30 miles less, and there's still plenty of miles driven. I was streaming earlier because it was dark when I started. After I finished my nap, and then as I started getting up into the Coconino Mountains over by Flagstaff, there was a pretty good amount of snow on the ground there. The road itself was fine, but there was definitely plenty of snow on the ground where there wasn't road. I can see it disappearing, looking down. I don't know if it's his phone, but he was looking down briefly. Your weekend going? Get plenty of rest, or got any plans to do anything fun, or just a veg, or what? Degrees. Stuck in the house. What's up with that? Cold weather, or sometimes I like to veg. Or maybe I'm just not getting enough rest or something, and I want to unwind. And it just, there are those days I prefer to just stay home and maybe just watch the movies or whatever. And other times I like to get out and go hiking, or go do stuff with the kids or whatever. Swapped loads last night with a friend of mine. The plan was he was going to pick his load up in Colton and then come up to Victorville where I had my truck parked and then swap loads. And then he was going to take this one, and so he'd have an easier time getting back to the normal shift that he likes to run, which is mornings, at about 7 a.m. up to like 7 p.m. or whatever. And I like to run at night. And I would have had more time to work with on his load, and he would have had a better chance to deliver mine on time, because mine's technically due at midnight tonight. And it is a drop in it. He got held up on his pickup though. His pickup appointment time was 16:30. It was a drop in that pickup, but they didn't even start to load him until about 20:30 or so, after 8 p.m. So a good 4 hours late. And then he finally got out of the. I think he finally got out of there around 11 or something at night. And by then I had already left, because I had already told them if he's not able to get here before my 34-hour reset's done, I'm going to just take off, because I got to get this load moving. If he can't get here by the time my reset's done, he's going to be in worse shape than I am with my load. So least into home my truck through them. Do I live there, or assuming that's what you're asking? Yeah, I live in Victorville, so I get home a lot. Even without taking home time, I actually left the house last night. Did a 34-hour reset at the house. I had some recaps, some hours to work with. I would have been able to leave about 3 hours sooner. The problem is I would have been waiting on my next day's recaps, and so waiting 3 extra hours to get my 34-hour reset in, which basically resets my 70-hour clock back to 70 hours. It put me in a position where I could get to the receiver about 2 hours earlier than I could have if I had rolled into the recaps. It will, but I'm hoping it doesn't force me to leave JCT. That would be the only reason I'd leave them. Starting to get a little hot. It's probably because the sun's beating more directly on the phone, so it tends to have that problem more. So I won't be able to see anything that's being said until it cools down some. And I can tell by the fact that the display is starting to get more dim. Up on exit 269 Jackrabbit Road.
someone has ever said to you, but in retrospect, it was something you really needed to hear.
Some kind of listening entertainment.
Christy Brown. Answered November 15, 2019.
I already
I was engaged to be married and my fiancé had a 6-year-old son from a previous marriage. They were married young when she was 17 and he was 18 as she had gotten pregnant and everyone involved thought marriage was the answer. It wasn't. They lasted about a couple of years, then divorced. I came along a couple of years later. At the time we were engaged, I was 21, he was 24, and his ex-wife was 23. As you can see, we were all young and pretty immature. His ex-wife had custody and lived several states away. My fiancé tried to see his son as often as he could, but it was difficult because of finances. He did faithfully pay his child support every month. However, she was constantly complaining because he didn't see his child enough. He was constantly complaining because he felt guilty. I was constantly complaining because we were broke all the time, and I blamed the child support. Told you we were all pretty immature. Eventually the blaming and complaining blew up into full-out arguments and fighting between all of us. To give both of them credit, they never put their son into the middle of our fights. Later, when his son heard this story, he was shocked. To him, he always remembered everyone getting along. So, yay for that. At any rate, after a particularly bad argument between me, my fiancé, and his ex-wife, I called my best friend, again, to complain. I said something like I'll be glad when the son turns 18 and I'd never have to deal with his ex-wife again. She gave me this long silence, then finally said, "You need to grow up. You think when he turns 18 you'll never have to deal with her again. What about when he graduates from college? When he gets married? When he has children? That ex-wife that you hate is his mother, and she will always be in your life if you marry this man. You either need to learn how to deal with it like an adult or leave him. If you don't, you'll spend the rest of your life fighting with this woman. Is that what you really want?" I cannot begin to tell you how shocked and hurt I was. Here was my best friend, taking her side. It was unbelievable. I hung up on her, shaking with rage. How dare she act like this was my fault? Why would she say something like that to me? Then this little voice in my head spoke up and said, "Yes." Why indeed. It stopped me in my tracks. I knew she was my friend, and I trusted her. Why indeed would she deliberately hurt me in such a way? Maybe because she wasn't trying to hurt me. Maybe because what she said was the truth. I realized then that it didn't matter who was right or who was wrong. What mattered was that if I didn't find a way to get along with his ex-wife, everyone was going to be miserable for a long, long time. Eventually, all this fighting would bleed down to her son and more than likely damage both mine and his father's relationship with him. Did I really want that? Did I want to fight like this for the rest of my life? I think it was at that moment I made the final transition to adulthood. I finally grew up. I vowed from that day forward I would not fight with her, I would not complain about the child support, and I would find a way to, if not to be friends with her, to at least be friendly to her. Everything changed after that. It didn't happen overnight, but gradually we progressed from being friendly to actual friendship. She asked me for advice when the son went through the terrible teen years, and I'd like to think I helped her navigate those waters. He turned out to be a fine, generous, and caring man, and I give her a lot of credit for that. He graduated from a military college at the top of his class. During the grad ceremony, the mother is the one that pins the lieutenant bars on his shoulders for the first time. She refused to do it by herself. She had them call me up there on the stage, and alongside her, she pinned the bars on his right shoulder and I pinned the bars on the left. That was an honor she did not have to share with me, and yet she did. She is a wonderful woman, and we are still friends to this day. I am so grateful my friend had the courage to risk our friendship and love to tell me the hard truth. I am also forever grateful I had the good sense to listen to her. A quick note, my best friend and I are still best friends and it's been 39 years now. I would die for her if I had to, and while no one truly knows another's heart, I believe she would do the same for me. 58.3k views, view 3k upvoters, view sharers. About the author.
Crazy what a bit of
Christy
maturity
Brown.
and respectful do for you.
389.3k content views, 73.4k this month. View 29 other answers to this question. About careers, privacy terms, contact. Open an app. Article 134 of 148. Barr says Epstein's suicide resulted from perfect storm of screw-ups. File, in this July 23, 2019 file photo US. Attorney General William Barr addresses the International Conference on Cybersecurity at Fordham University in New York. Attorney General William Barr wants Facebook to give law enforcement a way to read encrypted messages sent by users, reigniting tensions between tech companies and law enforcement.
City, Arizona now.
AP photo, Richard Drew, file. More. Washington, Attorney General William Barr said in an interview published, death of screw-ups rather than any nefarious act. Barr's statement refuted suggestions from members of Epstein's family that he may have been murdered. His remarks came the same week that 2 prison guards were criminally charged, accused in an indictment of failing to check on Epstein every half hour as they were required to and then lying about it on prison logs. I can understand people whose minds went to sort of the worst case scenario, because it was a perfect storm of screw-ups, Barr said in an interview with the Associated Press as he flew to Montana on Thursday night. Epstein's death in August at a federal detention center in Manhattan set off a rash of unfounded conspiracy theories on social media that were picked up and repeated by high-profile figures, including Mayor Bill de Blasio and former Mayor Rudy Giuliani. No matter their ideology, the refrain of the theories was the same: something did not add up. Even after New York City's chief medical examiner ruled the death a suicide by hanging, conspiracy theories continued to percolate on the internet after lawyers for Epstein challenged that finding. Then Epstein's family hired a forensic pathologist, who claimed that the broken bones and cartilage in Epstein's neck points to homicide. Barr said that he, too, was initially suspicious. How could someone who had been on suicide watch kill himself in one of the most secure jails in the U.S.? In the interview, he said that his concerns were sparked by the number of irregularities at the jail, the Metropolitan Correctional Center, where Epstein was being held awaiting trial for sex trafficking charges. But investigations by the FBI and the Justice Department's Inspector General have put to rest those suspicions, proving Epstein's death was a suicide, Barr said. He said that he personally reviewed security camera footage showing that no one entered the area where Epstein was housed on the night he died. Barr said Epstein was able to kill himself after a series of errors by prison officials and guards. The Justice Department was still investigating several aspects of Epstein's death, he said, including why he did not have a cellmate the night he hanged himself, even though he had recently been on a suicide watch. Typically, people at risk of suicide are not housed alone. I think it was important to have a roommate in there with him, and we're looking into why that wasn't done, and I think every indication is that was a screw-up, Barr said. The systems to assure that was done were not followed. On Tuesday, prosecutors unsealed an indictment charging 2 jail employees, Tobin Noel and Michael Thomas, who were responsible for guarding Epstein when he died. Federal prosecutors accused the guards of shopping online, browsing the internet and sleeping while they should have been conducting regular checks of Epstein's cell. They were charged with conspiracy and falsifying records to make it look as if they had performed their duties. The evening Epstein died, from 10:30 p.m. to 6:30 a.m., security cameras showed that nobody entered the wing where Epstein killed himself, alone in his cell, the government indictment said. He was discovered when the guards entered to bring him breakfast. Both Thomas and Noel had rejected a plea deal. They have pleaded not guilty. Montel Figgins, a lawyer for Thomas, said that his client, a single father with 3 children, was being scapegoated for severe staff shortages and mismanagement at the jail that led to Epstein's death. We had hoped that the U.S. Attorney's Office would make an effort to try to address the systematic failures with respect to the Bureau of Prisons, he said. They chose instead to indict Mr. Thomas. Barr, who has vowed to investigate and bring charges against people who helped Epstein procure young women for sex, said investigators were moving ahead in the case despite the death of the main defendant. I'll just say there is good progress being made, and I'm hopeful in a relatively short time there will be tangible results, he said. After Epstein's death, Barr reassigned the acting director of the Bureau of Prisons and named Kathleen Hawk Sawyer, who ran the Prisons Bureau from 1992 to 2003, to the post. Sawyer has focused on addressing the systemic problems. A spokeswoman said that she had directed the staff to get back to basics, providing a safe environment for staff and inmates and hiring staff who are ethical, professional, well-trained and diverse. The Inspector General released a report Monday, before the charges against the guards were unsealed, that said the Bureau of Prisons faced significant challenges in ensuring the safety and security of prison staff and inmates. The report cited multiple problems in the federal prison system, including faulty security camera systems, poor inmate monitoring, and insufficient staffing. Suicide rates nearly doubled between the 2016 fiscal year and the 2018 fiscal year, it noted. This article originally appeared in the New York Times. Copyright 2019 The New York Times Company. Article 135 of 148. Hesperia grad Dominic Reyes lands UFC title shot against John Jones. Victorville Daily Press 4 hours ago. Dominic Reyes got his wish. After months of calling out the baddest man in the UFC, Dana White told ESPN on Friday that light heavyweight champion John Jones will square off against Reyes on February 8 in Houston. Reyes, 12-0, is coming off a first-round knockout over former UFC middleweight champion Chris Weidman last month and had been in the running to fight Jones, along with Corey Anderson. White told ESPN the fight will headline a card at the Toyota Center. Coming into this with everything to gain and nothing to lose, Reyes wrote on his Instagram post. So blessed to be in this position. After scoring 6 wins in UFC since 2017, Reyes, a Hesperia graduate and 2007 Daily Press Football Defensive Athlete of the Year, has made a name for himself several highlight reel knockout victories. He's been fighting professionally since 2014 after wrapping up his senior season at Stony Brook University in 2013, where he became the school's all-time leading tackler with 259 tackles.
That sounds familiar.
Jones, 25-1, last fought in July when he scored a decision victory over Thiago Santos. Earlier this year, he also outpointed Anthony Smith. Jones has not lost a bout since 2009, a disqualification against Matt Hamill. In the co-main event, Valentina Shevchenko will defend her flyweight champion against number 1 contender Caitlin Chookagian. Article 136 of 148. Answer: Quora. Quora. Open and sign in. If you were in prison, would you prefer to be in solitary confinement? Gabriel Adami, 6 terms over 18 years in solitary confinement, Shoe. Answered November 22, 2019. This is a great question. Pelican Bay Prison opened in 1989. C Facility D facilities were Shoe solitary. Many of the men who were put there were powerful prison gang members and associates. The administration felt they had to lock them in solitary indefinitely, with reviewing every 6 years. If you had no gang-associated 115's write-ups, they would release you to general population. If you did get a write-up for something as minor as talking to another gangster who may be in the cell next to you, well, you just got denied for another 6 years. It was a way to systematically punish and hold about 1,900 men in solitary. The only way out of that vicious cycle was to parole, debrief, or die. Many did all of the aforementioned. Many of these men spent 20 to 25 years in solitary. After a series of hunger strikes, the media brought to light the injustices. Cruel and unusual punishment, a class action lawsuit that had been going for over a decade was settled. In 2015, the first of about 1,900 California convicts were released. It took 2 years for the last man to be released. When the time came, quite a few did not want to leave solitary. After so long, it became home to many. Change can be difficult. Many could not handle the crowds in general population, noise and lack of manners by new booties and fish inmates. Overwhelming was a word many used. Think about it, these guys hadn't drank a soda in damn near 25 years, not used the phone, had a photo taken, nor eaten an ice cream, crowded yards. Many of these men had what we called shoe syndrome. They would talk in whispers and would think the dentist put a satellite chip in their tooth, etc. I seen many men deteriorate over the years in solitary. I would rather be in general population. But there were times when I thought I wish I was back in solitary. Hope this answers your question. Thank you, Sinsarichi Adami. 116 views. View sharers. Answer requested by Pam Anderson. Open an app. About careers, privacy terms, contact. Article 137 of 148. Answer: Quora. Quora. Open an app. Sign in. What was the best gotcha you've seen in a court case? Colin Browdy, former KC-130 flight mechanic at U.S. Marine Corps, 1991-1995. Answered September 26, 2019. Upvoted by Karen Mackey, J.D. Law, University of Nebraska-Lincoln, 1994, and Robert L. Lamoureux, J.D. Law, George Mason University School of Law, 1987. Author has 1.7K answers and 696K answer views. My mother did it. Years ago, my drug-addicted sister abandoned my then 2-year-old niece.
Looks like it's in
I was
better
already
shape
raising
now.
her 7 and 8-year-old sons by myself as a 26-year-old single uncle, father-uncle. After a year living with my father and then my mother, good family friends of my mother offered to adopt my niece. My sister voluntarily terminated her parental rights, but the drug dealer father did not. He had never made any attempt to see my niece in the preceding 2 years, but was going to fight the termination of his parental rights. During the long fight to terminate his rights, 3 consecutive court hearings were rescheduled when he was unable to appear due to a scheduling conflict. On the day of the hearing when his lawyer requested it, giving no reason other than the schedule conflict. At the next hearing he was in court. My mother had learned what his scheduling conflict was and had told both the guardian ad litem and her own lawyer the reason. Both said that they could not bring the reason up because it was somehow immaterial to the proceedings and they were unable to verify the information. My mother does not suffer fools. At the beginning of the proceedings, the judge made a bit of a light joke and said, "It's good to see you today," to shithead. My mother piped up, "Why don't you ask him why he couldn't be here?" Both lawyers told her to be quiet, but the judge asked her what she meant. Turns out the scheduling conflict was that he was arrested again for dealing drugs and could not post bail and had subsequently been convicted on those charges and was now awaiting sentencing. The judge also did not suffer fools, the fools being my mother's lawyer, the guardian ad litem, and shithead's lawyer. He chewed all 3 of them out in court. Several weeks later his parental rights were terminated. My niece grew up with 2 loving families, ours and her adopted family, spending a great deal of time with our family. She is now a certified EMT and firefighter. 127.2K views, view 12.2K upvoters, view sharers. Open an app. About careers, privacy terms, contact. Article 138 of 148. Answer, Quora. Quora. Open an app, sign in. As a flight attendant, what's the best thing you've seen another passenger do for another passenger or for you? Samuel Weber, high IQ, ADHD, 8 years experience in IT.
At the truck stops here along 40
Updated
lately.
November 1st, 2019. Author has 2.6K answers and 1 meter answer views. Q. As a flight attendant, what's the best thing you've seen another passenger do for another passenger or for you? I'm not a flight attendant but was asked to answer the question. I was on a flight from Utah to San Jose, which was about 2 hours. There was a woman that was obviously a nervous new mom. Her baby was less than 3 months old and she could not get him to settle down. The baby was crying and screaming, disrupting everybody's travel. I was traveling alone, but I was third of 8 children and I was changing diapers by the time I was 5. After the seatbelt light went off, I went and talked with her. I discovered the baby was cold and gassy. She was exhausted, hadn't slept well. I asked her if she minded if I hold her baby for a while. I was doing the bounce step down the aisle not very far and burped her baby. After about 10 minutes I went to return the baby to the tired mom to find she was asleep. I didn't mind, I enjoyed playing with babies. I left her a note with my name and seat number. I entertained the baby the rest of the trip. It's not like I can go anywhere mid-flight on an airplane. I half expected the mom to be furious that I wasn't right there when she woke up. Instead, she was really gracious and appreciated the nap and a break from being mom 24/7. I was playing peekaboo with him when I felt someone watching me. The baby was giggling. I turned over my shoulder to see mom smiling and she thanked me profusely. I actually appreciated the distraction. We talked a bit heading to baggage and I gave her more tips. We never saw each other again, but I like to think her trip went better and had an easier time managing a new baby after the experience. Thanks for all the great messages and over 9,000 views and over 430 upvotes. Wow, fantastic response. Wow, shocking response, over 2.1K upvotes, 21K views. I'm honored. Over 4,000 upvotes. Amazing response. 40.3k views. View 4.3k upvoters. View sharers. Answer requested by Lily Strong.
Well, that was really nice of her.
Open an app. About careers. Privacy terms. Contact.
Got a whole bunch of people on the flight.
Article 139 of 148. Answer. Quora. Quora. Open an app. Sign in. Why do truckers hate Swift so much? William Tom, professional trucker since 1996, 2019 present.
See what answer this guy gives.
Answered November 19, 2019. Swift has the unenviable position of being in the spotlight for their turn at being the scapegoat. The deep-reaching tentacles of the interweb and technology that can post a picture instantly and nanoseconds later be viewed and commented on has been the bane of their existence for the past decade. Almost every day on Facebook and Reddit you can find the latest pictures of Swift trucks lying halfway into a ditch, pulling fuel pumps off their moorings, backing into another truck, etc. Many other answers and replies are correct when they say, "Cram two to a room in the library and find an encyclopedia." For 2 days they'll all sit through 8 hours of pertinent company info, sign 231,728 forms, listen to impassioned sales pitches for legal protection insurance packages, and a thoroughly confusing and brief explanation of placards and transporting hazardous materials. They will all break for an hour at lunchtime for a board part of their free room and board at orientation by feasting on 4 software analysis. Immediately upon returning to home base they begin to form and be assigned a time for a test flight or check ride to ascertain their driving skills. This is usually chaperoned by gimlet-eyed 20-year veteran with a 1,000-yard stare and slight twitch. Normally if you don't make it past this obstacle. Back in the days before GPS and cell phones there was a basic commercial map reading class and instruction on accessing your company payroll 800 number to pay for payphone calls. Lol. Later they're paired off with trainers and begin their next 3 weeks off adventure. The rookie gets as much hands-on driving as they can. And there are some very good trainers out there. But yes, many of them have less than a year of driving experience. Those who graduate are usually encouraged to pair off with a buddy and team drive. That's what I did with CRST. And honestly, I believe that is the way to go for new drivers. We were less stressed as there was always someone else there to help, advise, throw rocks, etc. Through the years, different companies have carried this burden of ineptitude. When I started with CRST, it was as J.B. Hunt and Schneider. These carriers have since altered most of their operations to local railroad yard hauling, regional logistics, or specialized hauling. I started training with USA Trucking. To be honest, at that time they were an excellent company and paid their trainers a very high wage. I was blessed with many intelligent students, and did what I believe to be a very good job at releasing a student with above average driving skills. Now to Swift. Industry scuttlebutt is that the owner, a mega wealthy dude in Arizona, simply doesn't care about the reputation of the company, but seeks to dominate the industry through sheer numbers and below average freight charges. If he loses a truck or 2 or 3 a day to an accident, he doesn't care because he had several thousand other loads that day being picked up and delivered. But that's just rumor and hearsay. 1.2k views. View 18 upvoters.
That's not the best answer.
Open an app. About careers.
Okay, so 2 parts here to that. Why Swift has this reputation. I mean, he's got some good information in there, but missed the most important part of it. Okay, Swift is the biggest company there is on the truckload side. Back when I first got my CDL, they had over 26,000 trucks. I remember the next biggest truckload carriers that I could think of were J.B. Hunt and Schneider, each of whom had 13,000. So in other words, Swift was single-handedly as large as J.B. Hunt and Schneider combined. Add in the fact that Swift has a robust training program. They get a lot of inexperienced drivers. Now, at the time when I first got my license, they did not have the worst safety record there was. Actually, they were right in the about the average where everybody else was mostly at. Now they had the most accidents in terms of raw numbers easily. And that's because they were so massive in size. It's like saying you got like 10% of 1,000 trucks. That's being in an accident. That's 100 trucks that's been in an accident in the last 2 years. Now, but if you have 10,000 trucks, then you have 1,000 trucks that have been in accidents in the last 10 years. So the accident rate, let's just say it was consistent about like 10% for every company, they would naturally have a lot more accidents to report and notice than any other company, just because they were twice as big as anybody else. Alright, mile marker 300 now. 60 miles from the New Mexico line. And at the time, they were the percentage of their trucks that had been in accidents over, it was 4,078. The percentage of trucks Swift that had been in accidents over the last 2 years when I first got hired was in like 8.5 or whatever it was range, which was actually very comparable to what most of the reputable carriers, mega carriers, were reporting as well. When they merged with Knight, though, they did downsize to about 17,000. Last time I checked, it might be down a little bit more towards 16 now, but I believe it was 17 last time I looked, which is about a month ago, somewhere in that ballpark. And but some of their accident numbers were still factoring in, when they had 26,000 trucks. Now it's kind of going by the wayside now, but it takes time for those accidents that were part of the 26,000 truck fleet to roll off with the back end of that 24-month period. Now, for what it's worth, there are people. I've seen plenty of people who have personal experience driving for Swift say it's actually not a bad company, or it wasn't it didn't seem a decent number of people seem to like the experiences they had as Swift drivers, except for the obvious the stigma that comes with just the fact that Swift's on the name of on the side of their truck and trailer. That too, because when I was with Sierra England, we would get I would always get people who were terrified to have me or a trainee park next to them just because my truck said Sierra England on it, no other reason. In fact, I remember I had stopped at one of the two pilots in Memphis, Tennessee once. I was soloing. I decided to stop at the smaller of the two. They're right across the street from each other. On the same side of Highway 78, but across a small street from each other. And it was kind of a tight lane. And I remember I got into the spot no problem. But then later on, some guy comes up and talks to me about how, there were all these people there who were watching me, thought I was going to have a hell of a time trying to get into the spot, and just because my truck said Sierra England on it, and then they were all surprised when they realized I got in there as easily as I did. Like, well, yeah, not everybody, just because the company has a reputation for having this or that kind of driver doesn't mean that we're all like that. I know quite a few Sierra England drivers who have quite a bit of experience, especially in the dedicated fleets. And there are plenty of Swift drivers who have a lot of experience too. But in trucking, a lot of people have that ego problem, that us versus them, or me versus everybody. Now I'm the king of the world kind of attitude, and it's stupid. Bunch of ignorant idiots is what people are. Okay, I'm pretty sure I passed you earlier, and now you passed me back up. Now I'm passing you back up. What's up with that? Pretty sure it's the same guy I passed earlier. We'll find out. I know I passed an ABC truck earlier. I don't know. Maybe it was a different guy.
One dead after big rig tire loose on California freeway hits Tesla. Mercury News 3 hours ago. The big rig lost a tire that jumped the center divider of the 5 freeway in San Clemente and hit a Tesla on Friday morning, killing a woman inside, according to the California Highway Patrol.
San Diego County.
The call about the collision on the northbound side of the 5 freeway just south of Avenida Magdalena came in at about 8:53 a.m., according to the CHP incident log. The tire bounced over the center divider from the southbound side of the freeway over to northbound lanes and hit a red Tesla.
Damn.
Coroner officials were called to the scene at about 9:18 a.m. and a SIG alert was issued soon after. The identity of the 38-year-old victim, from Vista, was not released. According to CHP reports from the scene, the white container truck that lost its tire pulled over onto the shoulder and stopped by the Cristianitos Road off-ramp and was going to be inspected. The collision caused a backup of traffic while officers worked to clear the lanes. City News Service contributed to this report.
That sucks. There's going to be a question of why did the tire come off? Did the driver do a proper pre-trip? And was there some kind of a mechanical failure that caused it, or what?
Open an app. Sign in. As a police officer, was there ever a criminal who impressed you? Walter Conrad, former retired patrol sergeant, 1974-2015. Updated June 11, 2019. Author has 420 answers and 1.5 meters answer views. Originally answered, as a police officer, was there ever a criminal who impressed you? When I worked as a county detective in New Jersey, I met a man we will call Joe. Joe was the only real hitman I ever met in my 41-year-long career. He was responsible for 12 bodies. Joe went to prison for other crimes. He was associated with the Williams brothers. They were the most notorious gangsters in South Jersey. They were so feared, the Cosa Nostra stayed out of their way. The Williams brothers controlled gambling, meth cooking, extortion, loan sharking, cigarette smuggling and virtually every other criminal enterprise south of Trenton. When Joe went away, the Williams brothers promised to take care of his wife. Joe loved his wife very much. He never cheated on her, or maintained a girlfriend. That was quite notable in the world he moved in. Joe had several businesses he lost while in prison. The Williams brothers ignored their promise to Joe. Big mistake. Joe flipped and made an offer to the prosecutor. In return for his information and testimony, he would be granted early release. He also had to make an allocution detailing every crime he had ever committed. The list was stupefying. Murders, burglaries, commercial burglaries, bank burglaries, and the list went on. Joe was the most personable of men. Jovial, generous, loyal, kind to animals, and a man who could talk to anyone on any subject. Joe was a man's man. You could not help but like him. Buried beneath the charisma and intelligence was a purely animalist nature. I was not afraid of him in the least, but I knew I was standing next to a very rare breed. Good luck, Joe, wherever you were. 104K views, view 2K upvoters, view sharers. About the author. Walter Conrad. Former retired patrol sergeant, 1974-2015. Studied National Rifle Association of America, NRA, graduated 2000. Lives in Godier, Mississippi. 1.5 meters content views 35K this month. In other languages. In German. Bis du als Polices Gemmels von einem Verbrecher beeindruckt gewesen. View question. About careers, privacy terms, contact. Open an app. Article 4 of 148. Quora. Open an app. Sign in. During WW2, which American general was the most respected by the German army generals? Rick Sheehy, accomplished ghostwriter of 50-plus articles, books. Answered November 6, 2019, upvoted by Anthony Ritchie, 12 years USMC, 10 Navy, 3 Army, 1st Gulf War, OIF 06, 07, and Gary Schuster, MS. Aerospace and Aeronautical Engineering and History, University of North Dakota, 2017. Author has 300 answers and 644.9K answer views.
Anthony Ritchie's a
Contrary to the
friend of
movies,
mine.
it was not canon. They
They
considered him a fool and Rommel, very overrated in his own right, wished he could fight Patton on equal terms because his ego would allow him to make mistakes someone like Bradley would never do. There were 2 lesser-known generals the Germans couldn't figure out but came to respect. I would say this is German for respected. One was Jacob Devers, who commanded the 6th Army Group. He was a tactician and instructor by training and wasn't afraid to try new things. He fought Himmler's Army Group Oberien. During Operation Nordwind, the left hook of Battle of the Bulge, Devers was allowed to operate freely, so his main tactic was the fight over certain areas, make the Germans bring up heavy reinforcements and then withdraw and have another unit attack the flanks. It took the Germans an entire army group to protect the Colmar pocket, from which they had to withdraw because Devers really went in another direction. It should also be noted that he had not 1 but 2 Japanese-American regiments and wasn't afraid to take black divisions that failed to perform adequately, which happened a lot because bad officers were dumped there. He sent for hungry young officers and told them they could make or break their careers with them. He got amazing results. Another general the Germans respected was Jimmy Doolittle. His performance during Big Week amazed them. By the time they realized what he was really doing, they were overcommitted and couldn't back down. Adolf Galland, the German commander, met with Doolittle after the war. The two became friends actually, and told him the lesson he learned is to be most afraid of the man you think is a fool because he may be making a fool out of you. 233.8K views, view 1.4K upvoters, view sharers. About the author. Rick Sheehy. 644.9K content views, 323.8K this month. In other languages. In German. Welcher amerikanische General Word I am Zweiten Weltkrieg von den Deutschen Generalen am meisten respektiert. View 21 other answers to this question. About careers, privacy terms, contact. Open an app. Article 5 of 148. Quora. Open an app. Sign in. What is the pettiest thing you've seen a cheap person do at a restaurant? Emma Owen, works at NHS England, 2016 present. Updated November 15, 2019, upvoted by M. Onaga, former barista at a local cafe at restaurants. I was speaking to a guy from a dating site for a couple of weeks before we went on a date. He seemed a stand-up guy. We decided we'd go bowling then for a meal. I was really excited to meet him. First of all, I didn't have a car, which he knew. He drove to the bowling alley. He would have had to gone, literally a 2-minute detour to pick me up, but he didn't. So I walked. I was never going to ask for a lift, but if I was him, I'd have offered for sure. It was a 25-minute walk from mine to the bowling alley. We arranged to meet at 6 p.m. He arrived 10 minutes early and called me to see where I am. I said I'll be there in 10. He said he'd pick me up, but he's already paid for his parking ticket. Again, don't know why he didn't offer before, but I let it slide. I arrived on time. He didn't attempt to look smart. He wore jeans which had a paint stain on and a polo shirt. I wanted to see through the date as we'd seemed such a great match. I ordered the bowling ticket and shoes, and before the lady asked for payment he quickly said he was going to the toilet to put the shoes on. Which is weird, because I usually put the shoes on when I sit down at the alley. I paid. Now, I don't mind paying for the both of us, I just found it rude that he didn't offer to at least pay his half. And he clearly ran off to the toilet on purpose. At this point, I'd paid, so I wanted to see the game through. I was thinking the whole time, he seems such a good man for the past couple of weeks. I don't understand. He was constantly making sexual remarks throughout the game. I like to be complimented. But he was constantly commenting on my ass. I was getting a little uncomfortable. After the game, I was going to go home, but he said he'd booked a table in a restaurant, so I thought, fuck it, I'm hungry. I might as well eat. Maybe he's paying for the food as he's booked the restaurant and I've paid for bowling. Maybe this was why he didn't offer to pay his half of the bowling. I'll give him this chance. The restaurant was only a 5-minute walk away, so we walked. Now, I wasn't just thinking about money. I was thinking about manners and respect. Not only that, he was in a pretty well-paid job. He knew I was a single mom and not earning nearly the amount of money he was. Obviously that's not his problem, but morally, he should at least pay half, right? We got to the restaurant. He ordered steak, which was expensive. After we ate our food he says, I've left my wallet at home. What? I paid for the food, as I had no choice but to. I couldn't believe it. I spent the same amount of money that night as I would have spent on a weekly food shop for me and my child. He was well aware of my money situation before we met. He offered to give me a lift home. I thought that's the least he owes me. So I got in the car. I knew full well I'd never see him again, so I got him to drop me off a street away from my house as I didn't want him to know where I lived. He stopped the car and attempted to kiss me. I said no thank you. Then he asked if he could come in my house for some fun. I got out of the car, slammed the door and walked home. Edit. Thank you for the upvotes and comments. I didn't expect so many. I see a few people saying I should have refused to pay his half of the meal. I understand I should have at least attempted that. In the moment I didn't think to do that, but I wish I did. Also, as much as the money situation annoyed me, it's the principle behind it that matters. He had no respect for me. 41.4k views, view 2.5k upvoters, view sharers. About the author. Emma Owen. Thomastic Present. Diploma Level 3 Health and Social Care. Lives in Newark, Nottinghamshire. 59.2k content views, 43.2k this month. View 100 plus other answers to this question. About careers, privacy terms, contact. Open an app. Article 6 of 148. Quora. Open an app. Sign in. As a doctor, have you ever had an unforgettable patient? Schieffer Williams. Updated October 17, 2018. Upvoted by Liang Hai Sai, retired general internist, former intensive care physician. And Michael Mangold, MD. Medicine and Healthcare and Psychiatric Treatment, Rosalind Franklin University of Health Sciences, 1990. Author has 228 answers and 3.2 meters answer views. This is a very disturbing story. It involves one of the toughest humans I have ever met and involves some pretty gory imagery. You have been warned. I received a 20-minute warning that a trauma code had been called for a young woman. Her car had slid off a gravel road. The victim had been ejected from her car right into a tree. Why? Because she wasn't wearing her seatbelt. The EMTs wheeled her into the trauma bay seated cross-legged, leaning forward in the middle of a backboard with no seat collar on. Her face below the nose was a bloody ruin. She was covered in blood. She was leaning forward slightly. In her hand was a small Yankauer portable suction tip. With it she was calmly suctioning away blood that was pooling around her fully visible vocal cords. The EMTs, who were used to horrific injuries, were visibly disturbed. They gave their report as we lifted the backboard up. She sat in the center of it like a sad, bloody Buddha. We held her steady on the board and lifted the girl and the board up and over onto a hospital gurney. She remained motionless through it all, just suctioning away the blood. Calmly focused on saving her own life. The EMTs told her story to the trauma team. She had been driving down a gravel road and lost control. Her car rolled and she was thrown out the window into a tree. A branch had caught her full in the mouth. It had torn her jaw away and broken it. Her tongue, with no support, was lying on her neck, allowing me to see the top of her trachea with her vocal cords visible. To this day the memory is upsetting. They had found her wide awake under the tree, on all fours, bleeding briskly from her face. Apologetically the EMT explained, she just flat refused to lie on the backboard. We tried and she fought us. We were sucking the blood out of her, well, her mouth, and she just grabbed the sucker right out of my hand and took over. She rode here just like this. The trauma surgeon looked at the girl and back at me. Can't do anything until that airway is controlled. I walked around to her front. Her eyes were a brilliant blue and laser focused on the trauma team. I introduced myself and asked if she knew that she was in the barely perceptible head bob. She was absolutely with it. I turned a wall suction canister on high and approached to assess her airway. She flung her hand out beseechingly for the bigger and harder sucking implement. An upgrade. I traded her weak portable suction for my own. In the brief instant of transfer she coughed, painting the team and me in a grotesque parody of Jackson Pollock. I had my nurse draw up some etomidate to put her to sleep and bicuronium to relax her muscles. Her blood pressure was just 90 systolic and her heart rate was 140. Young people can keep going a long time, but when they reach their limit they can quickly arrest, so I knew we didn't have much time to fool around. Are you getting tired? I asked. Tiny nod. Yes. Do you understand that we need to put you off to sleep so we can help you? Tiny nod. Great. I'm going to slip you off to sleep and help you breathe so that we can fix your face. Do you understand? Another tiny nod. A tear leaked down her face. I took her IV line and looked her in the eyes. It's going to be all right. I'm not going to move you. I am going to send you off to sleep now. She nodded. I pushed the etomidate and her eyes rolled up. The intubation was ridiculously simple as her glottis was visible. I placed an anode tube and we laid her down as her limbs went slack. I gave the paralytic and began to ventilate. The team pounced. The damage was beyond what our plastics guy felt comfortable with. She was otherwise in good shape. She was clearly going to need a team of orthomaxillofacial surgeons and plastic surgeons to repair her face. We put in a set of lines and sedated her and sent her by helicopter to the University Medical Center an hour away. Later, a nurse who knew the family showed me a before picture of her. She was a gorgeous girl. Many weeks later the University Medical Center sent us an after picture. 7 surgeries later and she looked almost as good as she had before the accident. The only thing that was different was a thin pair of scars down either cheek. Her teeth had been replaced in a reconstructed jaw. It was a beautiful repair. I have seen a lot of patients who have been through serious injuries. This girl impressed me because she remained focused and calm and did what she had to do to save her own life. She fought the EMTs when they tried to put her in a position that would have left her drowning in her own blood. She never indicated any pain. I don't have any idea what became of her, but with poise like that, I'm sure she'll succeed. 362.1k views, view 14.6k upvoters, view sharers. About the author. Schieffer Williams. Anesthesiologist, father of 3, owned by 2 dogs. Anesthesiologist at Doctors 1995 present. Studied anesthesiology at University of Iowa Hospitals and Clinics, graduated 1900. Lives in North America. 3.2 meters, content views 106.1k this month. In other languages. In Italian. Come medico, ha mi avuto un paziente indimenticabil. View 33 other answers to this question. About careers, privacy terms, contact. Open an app. Article 7 of 148. Quora. Open an app. Sign in. What is the best case of you just picked a fight with the wrong person that you witnessed? Jan Bradley, worked at University of Alberta, 1981-2013. Updated June 11, 2019. Upvoted by T.J. Patrick, Master's Psychology, London, 1989, and Norbert Scheck, Ph.D. Law and Constitutional Law, John Paul II, Catholic University of Lublin, 2008. Author has 176 answers and 120k answer views. I was just a girl, probably about 10. My dad was driving the family to my grandmother's place for Sunday dinner. Dad stopped behind a car at a red light when it happened.